So our topic for today is love and care for children. How come we're talking about this today?
Yes, thank you and welcome everybody to a new episode of our podcast. One of our topics, another topic we dealt with in the open space discussions was love and care for children, raising children. So we realized that it's so important to be informed, especially for young women before being a parent and even taking the decisions whether we want to be parents, because most of us are young and might not have children yet, or most of us don't have children. So we thought it would be really good to talk about it so that we can be informed and deal with the topic. So that's why we are talking about this today. And just to mention also a few quotes that show the importance of dealing with this. There's Hubert Humphrey, who said, "The way we treat our children in the dawn of their lives and the way we treat our elderly in the twilight of their lives is the measure of the quality of our nation." And I think often enough we see like not so great ways of treating children or elderly. So if we want to have a great nation, it's important to take care of everybody, and not just, let's say, a middle class who's paying taxes or so. I think being able to reflect on what does it mean to have children and raise children is so important. So we want to do this today. And just to give two more ideas, Jane Nelson said, "It is ironic that adults want children to control their own behavior when the adults have difficulty controlling their own behavior." And I guess that's a quite widespread mindset. So this is a bit of unpacking this here today. And one last one, Graham White said, "The most powerful way to change the world is to live in front of our children the way we would like the world to be."
Okay, so it's a big job. What support is available for people at the beginning of their parental journey?
Yes, so it's always good to be informed even before taking the decision of having a child or adopting a child or being foster parent or like considering parenting in general. And let's say somebody decides to go down the road of having a pregnancy and giving birth, there are all different supports available. So there's support for healthy pregnancy, nutrition around during pregnancy, what to be aware of. There's pregnancy yoga classes in many contexts and countries. There might be classes, or there are classes to learn how to prepare for labor and birth giving, how to prepare for breastfeeding, if that's an option a woman would like to take. There can be programs that advise on how to be aware of self-care, like how to self-care as a parent while caring for a baby, and like making sure as a parent to be in a good condition and caring for oneself before starting to care about somebody else. And there are positive parenting advice groups, and also counseling and therapy are really good options to consider, like in order to reflect on the own upbringing and to be able to take conscious choices around how to raise children rather than maybe even unwillingly repeat the own upbringing. And I mean, if the own upbringing was great, then it is probably all right. But if somebody has had a difficult upbringing, it's very important to be aware of it, to take conscious decisions about how do I want to raise my child, so that there's not necessarily this repetition of maybe transgenerational trauma and other aspects. So to increase the self-awareness of oneself to be then a good parent, or like trying to do one's best as a parent. And of course, if somebody now decides, I don't want to have a biological child or can't have a biological child, but maybe want to be a foster parent or adoptive parent, then there are a bit more of other programs available, and actually also mandatory to do, like there are different background checks, home checks, and programs and classes to attend before there's the ability to then take a child into one's home. So there are all different kind of programs and classes that are good to be aware of. There are also parenting programs, but they often not very accessible for those who would like to do them before they have the child. So they might come into play a bit later. But in general, all different programs that are good to be aware of and to seek support when it comes to the stage.
Thank you. So you have this wonderful baby in your arms. So what supports are there after the birth?
Yes, so it really depends a bit on the context and country, of course, but I would say in most, especially European countries, there are for sure baby yoga classes, baby massages, baby swimming classes, There are also mother yoga with the baby, so a combination. Then if the child is a bit older, toddler groups for the children. And then there are positive parenting programs. I mentioned earlier, parenting programs can be really helpful. So especially if a child is there, they are accessible for all parents, where it's about learning how to parent in a positive way. So that means those programs entail aspects as how to raise confident, competent children, resilient children, how to deal with disobedience and conflict, how to manage conflict in healthy ways, how to develop good bedtime routines, hassle-free shopping with children. For example, also if there are children with additional needs, how to support them well. There can be even assistance with mealtime preparations and healthy food for children and classes and courses, even just for this topic, to learn how to give the good food to the child and nurture them well. And again, counseling and therapy are always good options to consider at any stage for oneself as a parent. So there are these different options that are available in most countries, and some countries even have programs which are called home visiting programs. So that means a social worker or professional working in this field would come to the parents or parent at home, visit them with the child, and accompany the development of the child for often several years. So maybe since the birth or even before birth giving up to the age of 5 or 6, to make sure the parent has the support and gets the knowledge and the methodologies they need in order to raise the child as hassle-free as possible. Let's say it this way.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about negative parenting. So what does neglectful parenting or even abusive parenting look like?
So as in any unhealthy relationship, in the relationship with children, we can also find a lot of abuse and all forms of abuse, of course. So this might include isolation, so kind of social abuse, like isolating the children from either another parent if the parents aren't together, or other important adults, maybe other family members, peers, so children of the same age, potential grandparents, and so on. So isolating the children from having access to important other human beings, and that with this connection. There might be emotional abuse towards the children, so put downs, name calling. Sometimes it's even if the parents are separated, one parent might use the children against the other parent. So maybe trying to get information about the other parents to the children. Or using them in other different ways. There's often a lot of inconsistency and shaming of children, or also blaming of children for something that went wrong in the parent's life. That's actually not the responsibility of the child, but blaming them for something that happened, and putting them under a lot of pressure and responsibility. Then there can be economic abuse. So, for example, the withholding of very basic needs. For example, withholding child support, like not giving enough food, or using the child support that might be in place and not spending it on the child for their clothing, for their education, for their food, for their well-being, but using it for their own needs. So there is quite some economic abuse. And in this case also, again, one parent might use the children against the other in the system, maybe throughout the process of divorce and so on. Then threats are part of also, again, kind of psychological abuse, even emotional abuse. So threatening the children of maybe abandoning them or committing suicide if they don't do what they want, or physical harm, maybe confinement, or the threat of harming somebody else if they don't comply. So using threat is abuse of children. Using adult privilege is also a way of kind of harmful parenting. So treating children as servants, or maybe more like slaves, they have to work for you or do what you want, in unhealthy ways, maybe punishing them like overly strong, then bossing them, always wanting to win, or interrupting them, not giving them the space to express themselves. Also intimidation can be one part, so installing quite a strong sense of fear in them through their own actions, gestures, using the adult body size, that installs then this intimidation for this child. And yeah, of course, physical abuse, like being violent, maybe beating the child, pushing it, kicking, hitting, punching, choking, twisting arms, and so on. So all forms of physical abuse are, of course, very abusive and not very good for the child's development. And one aspect can also be using institutions. So, for example, threatening the punishment with courts or the police or the school, or informing their friends' parents about something, or threatening giving them up into foster home or foster care, and so on. So kind of using institutions as a way of, again, of threatening children or putting them under pressure. And then of course we also have the other parts or forms of abuse as sexual abuse. So any form of inappropriate sexual touch or sexual harassment, groping, all up to rape, but also the exposure to sexual activities and material that's really age inappropriate, and maybe the production of child pornography. These are all parts of sexual abuse towards children. Of course, as I already mentioned, in emotional abuse, name calling, put downs, and so on, there's also this verbal abuse, so inappropriate language use. And then if we speak about neglect in general, so maybe not spending enough time with the children, not giving them the physical affection they need, or not allowing them to expressing their emotions, not giving this emotional safety, maybe not providing food, clothes, housing, and so on. So there's a big range of things that can happen to children that would be considered as neglectful parenting and abuse of children, that children should be protected from.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. And that brings us to adverse childhood experiences. Can you talk to me about ACEs?
Yes. So ACEs, as you said, stands for adverse childhood experiences, and this is a concept that kind of tries to capture experiences children can have of abuse and neglect that they make during childhood, and that impacts their development so deeply, and with often very long-term negative effects. So it's quite helpful to be aware of this developed concept of ACEs, so adverse childhood experiences, because it helps us create an awareness of what kind of childhood experiences are in the room, what did the child experience, what was it exposed to, and to help prevent negative long-term effects. So they might be physical or mental, so they might impact the health and like children's development in general. And it's good to try to prevent those negative aspects if they are known, and to also raise awareness towards oneself and others, to reflect on own life choices and to take better decisions, especially in adulthood, informed by knowing what might have gone wrong in the childhood if there was something. And just to say, a really accessible way of thinking about one's childhood and how impactful it might have been, especially in negative ways. And there are online often available ACEs questionnaires. So easy to just Google ACE, so ACEs questionnaire, and there are usually 10 questions, and they might involve questions as: did you witness one of your parents or caregivers being threatened? Or were you sexually abused as a child? Or was there some physical violence in the home? So different questions that can be answered with yes or no, depending on the situation that the person was exposed to. And in the end, it shows a score. And usually we say if there's a score of 0, that's ideal. That means that's kind of the ideal childhood. If it's up to 3, 1, 2, 3, it's kind of quite widespread. It has its impacts, but it's still okay. But let's say ACEs of more than 4 up to 10 can have serious impacts on the health, on the mental health, the physical health, and so on. So it's important to be aware of this, especially in adulthood, if sicknesses might come up and there's this question: why did I develop this or that sickness? What might be the roots to it? And there are also very good videos on YouTube that explain what ACEs are and what effects they have. And there's a really good TED Talk I would already like to kind of recommend right now. It's by Nadine Burke Harris, And the title is How Childhood Trauma Affects Health Across a Lifetime. So she's a practitioner working with children in a hospital. She's amazing. She held this TED Talk, but also other talks. She's quite famous in this area, and she really explains and elaborates how important it is to be informed about adverse childhood experiences, how to, if they were given, how to prevent the long-term effects, but even how to start preventing them from happening at all. So yeah, that's good to know about.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. So let's move into the light. And what would a nurturing environment for children look like? What's good parenting?
Good parenting in general is informed by love and care for children. So children experience a sense of trust and respect. So they feel acknowledged in their own feelings. Like they feel respected at home. They know they can trust their caregivers. They are like supported in their development of independence, in their need for privacy. They are respected in their feelings towards other people, like other caregivers or parents or other family members and so on. They feel believed and heard, listened to when they have something to express. Then there's, of course, this emotional security. So children feel free and safe and comfortable expressing themselves. They feel they can depend on the adult to turn towards them and have this trust to express themselves. Then, of course, there's physical security. So there's food provided, shelter, clothing. They learn the personal hygiene that we need to learn. They feel safe in the home environment, so there's no physical abuse, for example. Then there might often be a good routine that children can rely on. And if there's any injury that happens, which is normal, can happen to anybody, that they are attended to. So the child might be brought to a doctor to look after them, or maybe if it can be done at home, some attending to the wounds or whatever injury there might be. Then providing discipline is important as well. So as a parent, to be consistent with the child, to ensure that the rules that are used are appropriate to age and appropriate to the development of the child, and promotes actually the development of the child, that there are clear limits and expectations, that there are clear instructions, but in a constructive way and not as a punishment, so that the child can follow them and knows why they are in place, and that it's for their own best benefit or their own interest. And then giving time, of course, is important. Spending time with the children, doing outdoor activities and indoor activities together, being creative, maybe bringing them also to group activities with peers, like going to some sports club or music or theater or whatever activities there might be. Then also as parents to attend special events and being there and caring and showing that this matters, like celebrating things together, going to children's birthday parties and so on. Then the encouragement and support. Children need to feel encouraged and support, like be affirmed in their way of being and being encouraged to follow their interests, develop their passions, discovering their talents, just in general their development, and also allow for them to make mistakes. So if something goes wrong, to say, look, that's also part of life, but that's not the end of it. We can learn from it, and like using mistakes as a learning opportunity in a positive way, to teach new skills, to recognize improvement, and so on. But also to give children the space to disagree at times and to express their own opinion. They might see something differently from the adult. And then giving affection is very important. So verbal and physical affection, hugs, kisses, and so on, like appropriate ones, of course. Then also being affectionate if children were emotionally or physically hurt. So after falling or a small accident or whatever might have happened, to give them this reassurance it's okay to be affectionate towards them. And another very important aspect is to care for oneself as a parent or caregiver, to give personal time to oneself, to keep oneself healthy, to maintain friendships, to accept love and so on. So to be a very self-caring adult to then be able to provide care to somebody else, care and love to children. Yeah, that's the main aspects I can mention for this.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Hannah. And one last thing, have you any recommendations for further, if people want to access further information?
Yes, I do. There are two more really good TED Talks I would like to mention. One is from Rita Pearson, and it's called Every Kid Needs a Champion. And there's another one with Molly Wright. She's a child herself, and it's called How Every Child Can Thrive by 5. These are really good recommendations. I have another one which is more focusing on how negative abuse and neglect can impact children's development, especially in the context of domestic abuse. It's called First Impressions, Exposure to Violence and a Child's Developing Brain. It was produced by the California Department of Justice, and it's really interesting around, especially the brain development and how negative childhood experiences can impact the development negatively. But I also would like to mention again a few positive examples. There's the single foster and adoptive dad, Peter Mutabazi, who wrote the book Now I'm Known. And it's not only a book, it's a whole initiative. He even wrote he even published a second book lately, and he has a whole YouTube and other social media channels sharing his journey of being a single adoptive and foster dad, and it's quite amazing to see a really positive example, especially of a man parenting a big group of children. He has had over 40 children in his care, and I think that's just a nice example to look into to get some insight of what are the realities of parenting. And apart from that, I would like to recommend that in most countries, either health services and or child welfare agencies, they produce often material that are often either online or maybe printed, available for free for parents or those who consider being a parent, to get information around how is the child's development, what do I need to know for a newborn, for a toddler, for let's say preschool, then school age and so on. What's healthy development for the child, what nutrition do I need to be aware of for the child, and other aspects. So those resources are available in most countries, and they are really good to have and to look into to get these insights.
Thank you, Hannah.
Yes, thank you so much.